This is Conversations with Ronnie Keith. This is Conversations with Ronnie Keith. This is Ep.1. I am very, very excited. Thank you guys for tuning in, listening, downloading. Tell your friends, tell your friends' friends, tell a friend. This is very different for me. I'm used to having John, Steph, Dwayne here, but this is me flying solo for Ep.1. But I'm not really flying solo on this first episode. I do have a special guest that I'll be sitting down. Of course, this is called Conversations with Ronnie Keith. I can't have these conversations by myself. So in a few moments, I'm going to introduce guests, very special guests. He had to be the first guest on this show. But before I do that, just want to let you guys know this is going to be a little different than the Short Desk podcast. When you listen to Short Desk podcast, you used to listen to all four of us. We come on, we give you all the entertainment, news, sports, top five, one has to go, all those things. But this is going to be just a little bit different where I sit down and I talk with extraordinary people from all walks of life. And each person has a story to tell, and they're all extraordinary in their own way. And so wanted to do this new concept. Episodes will be dropping every Friday. Every other Friday will be episodes with me and Iris, my wife, as we talk about our relationship, how we met, leading up to the marriage, the wedding, afterwards, how we doing now, all those things. So every other Friday will be my wife and I on this show. And in between those episodes, of course, will be me sitting down with these extraordinary people. So the first person, I'm not going to sit here and filibuster, go on and on and on. The first person that I will be bringing on is no stranger to any podcast that I've been on. He has been a frequent guest on the Short Desk podcast. I had to have him first. He's a very familiar voice for you guys, and that is Professor Antwann Simpkins. Antwann, how you doing today? Now, why can I not take him off mute? Look at this. Now, I put him on mute, and I can't take him off mute. Now, we're dealing with this live. Antwann, there you go.
I'm here. I took myself off.
Oh, I don't know why I could put you on, but I couldn't take you off. Ain't that something? And I never had that problem before. Antwann, welcome to Conversations with Ronnie Keith. How are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good, dear brother. How are you?
I'm doing well. This has been something because you haven't been on the show in quite a while on the Short Desk. And so, I know that you've been very, very busy with a lot of things that have been going on the west side of things. But, I had to have you on this first episode as you are a dear, dear friend of mine and also one of our most requested guests on the Short Desk podcast. So I had to have you on. Now, I wanted to talk to you today as I said before, you've been on the show a few times and people have come to know you because of your commentary and the things that you've done. But we haven't given the audience a full background on who you are, how you grew up, how you got to where you are right now today. So I just wanted to kind of walk and talk to you about that, Antwann. I personally know you, you come from the same city I'm from, but everybody else don't know. So, you've had an interesting upbringing as far as how you got to how you were able to achieve your education. It wasn't the I guess you could say the regular path that everybody else has taken to get to their education. You went another way around it. So let's talk about your upbringing, where you're from, and how you got to where you are.
Sure. Okay. So first of all, it's an honor to be here and to be in conversation with you. I just feel like hey, we just brothers, shooting the breeze.
Yeah.
But in terms of my upbringing, born in Orlando, Florida, Richmond Heights, Orange Center area specifically. And then my
So
mom, if you know, you know.
yes.
And then my mom got married and relocated us to the east side of town, uh,
Mm,
close to the airport. If you know, you know.
yes.
Uh, and so from that time, I went from going to school at Blankner Elementary, where my grandmother taught, and I ended up at Pinar Elementary, then Liberty Middle School, then Colonial High School, which is how you and I met.
Hmm.
Um, and as you know, in terms of like my trajectory to get like where I'm at today in terms of my upbringing, like a lot of Black Southern folks, I was raised in the church, right?
Yes.
So as all of this was going on, in terms of just life happening every day, raised in the church, going to Bible study, usher, rehearsal, everything else, choir rehearsal, all of it. Um,
7 days a week, pretty much.
that's any time them church doors opened, okay? Somewhere between St. Mark, Mount Olive, I
Yeah.
was there, okay?
Yes.
Like, that's just what it is.
Yes.
I did not have a choice. I come from a line of preachers, okay? Uh,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
um,
Yes.
and as going to Colonial, now that I look back on it, Colonial really didn't resource Black people like that,
Hmm.
in terms of there was no intentional college guidance, college counseling. Take this course, we're going to direct you into ABCDE University.
Right.
That
Absolutely not.
wasn't a thing that, at least that I experienced at Colonial High School,
Hmm.
right? So after Colonial, I, like a lot of people, I went to Valencia.
Hmm.
Valencia, was one of the top community colleges actually in the nation at that particular point in time. Little did I know until I looked back and I was like, oh, okay, snap, got it. So I did that, but I did not graduate. And coincidentally enough, I started
Wow.
right after high school.
Hmm.
But brother, when I tell you, I had to restart Valencia at least 4 or 5 times.
And I think that has been the story for a lot of people. Now I'm going to back up a little bit
Yeah.
here. So you and I have a similar story in the sense that I wasn't born here, right? I was born in Tallahassee, Florida, lived in Columbia, South Carolina for a few years, then moved to Savannah, then ultimately we moved here to Orlando. I moved here in the second half of my second grade year. I lived in Pine Hills, but I was bused to Orange Center Elementary School. So that's where I went to elementary school. And before I started middle school, after fifth grade, we moved to the east side of town, and that's how I went to Liberty Middle. Now, how was the adjustment for you moving from the west side of town, so to speak? Well, it wasn't the west, but it was, on the other side of
On the other side of the
downtown.
tracks.
Yes. How how was that? How was that adjustment for you? Because back then, in the 90s, it was as it is. Well, I wouldn't say as it is today, but back then it was really two different worlds.
Oh, two totally, completely separate, different worlds. With the elementary school that I went to, which was Blainer, I was looking forward to going to Robert E. Lee.
Hmm.
Because that's where all my friends were going. But thankfully, I was still in elementary school, and while I was establishing friendships, like my best friend in elementary school, his name was Chad. I'll never forget him. um, and when I went to Pinar, it was a heavy adjustment because there were very few people that looked like me. There
Hmm.
wasn't a level of acceptance until I got to Liberty Middle School and I saw
Mm.
other Black kids, and there was a heavy population of Puerto Rican kids.
Mm. Okay.
And those were the kids that I was like, oh, my
Hmm.
people.
Right.
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 So
Right.
going to Liberty and going to Colonial allowed me to be around a whole lot of Black and Puerto Rican folk, right? More
Yes.
Puerto Rican
Yes.
than Black folk, to be, if we're gonna be honest, right?
Right.
But those two communities really stuck together,
Hmm.
because if you could make white friends, you could, like, I don't know if you remember Justin Harbacker.
Yes.
uh, Justin Hallbacker and I started off as enemies. He could not stand me. I could not stand him. By the time
Wow.
we ended senior year, we were best buddies. That's my boy. He can call me to this day, and I'll do anything for him. But all that to say, the adjustment, it was kind of difficult at first. But once middle school clicked in, and I saw like there were other kids, like me, I was like, okay, got it. Now in my
Right.
neighborhood, it was vastly different. I lived in a community called Chickasaw Trails,
Yep.
and all of my friends in that community were Puerto Rican, whereas my friends back in Richmond Heights and Orange Center, they were all black.
Correct.
And
Correct.
we used to play football in the street.
Right. Right. Right.
Throw the football in the street. You weren't having that with a homeowners association in Chickasaw Trails on the east side of Orlando at that day and time.
Hello. Hello.
Uh, so those things were major adjustments for me because I was like, oh my gosh, who am I going to play with? And if I could be honest with you,
Yeah,
I
definitely. That's what we hear.
realized the project that my mom was doing at that point in time. Now that I'm older,
Hmm.
in terms of she wanted her children, both my sister and I, because I think you also knew my sister Arsha.
Right. Yes.
Um, Listen, that late in the 90s was the first black cheerleader on varsity ever
Yep.
in the school's history, which is
I,
crazy.
I believe it.
Uh,
I
but
believe it.
my mom was trying to set a different, I think either a window or door of opportunity,
Hmm.
for because we were supposed to go to Jones. Everybody in my family has went to Jones High School.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I think she was trying to open up different doors of opportunity. But what that might have cost culturally and what that might have cost self-identifying wise was very expensive.
Mm, okay, I got you. I got you. Yeah, so I was supposed to go to Meadowbrook, and same thing. I was upset because I came over to Liberty pissed off. I was a bully because I just hated being over there. You know what I mean? Because all my friends were going to Meadowbrook, and then eventually we would be going to Evans. Now, of course, because I went to Jones, some of my friends would be going to Jones. I mean, we going to Robert E. Lee and then Jones because that's how the zoning was set up back then. So it was split. People that lived in Orange, some that lived in Orange Center went to Orange Center, and some that were over there where I live, they went over to Orange Center as well. But they would go split in the middle schools and of course the high schools. So I was I was a pissed off young man because I wasn't with my friends, but I was able to connect with people that looked like me at Liberty. And the funny thing
Hmm.
about it is, the only Spanish people that I had encountered, because there were some Spanish people at Orange Center, but they were all in Esau. So I was under the impression none of them could speak English. The ones that looked Spanish, the other ones I just thought they was black. And so I didn't know that I would find out, oh, okay, you black, but just in a different way. So yeah, okay, I got you. I got you. Now, fast forward back
Hmm.
to what we were talking about with the Valencia thing. When you left out of Colonial,
Hmm.
did you have a plan as far as this is what I want to do? This is what, my mind is set on. This is what I'm going to major in, all those things when you went to Valencia? Or was it just okay, I'll just go to Valencia because that's the next step?
I did not have any plans whatsoever. God had not spoken to me at all at that point in time. You know what I
Wow.
mean?
Okay.
I
Yeah.
had a
Yeah.
sister who, was doing very well at Florida State at that point
Hmm.
in time.
Hmm.
And I knew, listen, I'm a huge Florida Gators fan. Anybody that knows me knows I love Florida Gators. I was
Right.
down, I was very clear on the fact that I was not going to go to Florida State. If anything, I was going to go to University of Florida. That's what I was geared toward, but I just could
Hmm.
not get it. The classes weren't being taught like in a way that I could receive it. So there was no major. I was just walking in the dark. I was a church boy.
So
Um,
explain that to us, Antoine. When you said it wasn't taught in the way that you could receive, what do you mean by that?
there was no way as a black person that my
Hmm.
experience was being taught in the classroom.
Okay. Okay.
Um, like I couldn't understand humanities, which I now
Mm-hmm.
love. I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
understand sociology, which I now love.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I couldn't understand
Right.
history, but because I ended up going to HBCU, right now that's later down the line, right? Because keep in
Mm-hmm.
mind, I graduated high school in 2002. I did not
Mm-hmm.
start Morehouse until '09, right?
Wow.
So we're talking about like some time here. I went to Morehouse as an adult, okay, as a non-traditional student.
Wow. Wow.
Um, so while I was in those early years at Valencia, all I knew like was church. And really the funny part, the only class I understood was math, and that's because a black man was teaching it and he broke that down in a way in which I could understand it, because how you communicate to students and the cultural background of students matters,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
even at that point in time, listen, I had no direction. I didn't know what was up, what was down. I even took some real estate courses at Valencia. I was like, I'll get a real estate license. I was just
Mm-hmm.
throwing stuff at the wall to see what would stick. My life altering moment, right,
Mm-hmm.
um, happened in 2006, right?
Mm-hmm.
After going through a series of things at the Hope Church of Orlando under a pastor named Alan Wiggins,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't have the most desirable words for, but that's another story for
Ooh.
another day.
Okay.
Um, you know, After going through what I went through, in the process of years, I actually became licensed at that church, right? A
Wow.
licensed minister
Mm-hmm.
um, at that church. Not too soon after that, there was a series of things that fell out in that church that involved my sexuality. That was just nasty work.
Well, let
Okay,
me ask you something.
sure.
Do you want to talk about that?
I'm completely open. Listen, we have
Okay.
healed. We have moved on. So you can ask me any question you want
Okay.
to. We are open book.
Okay. So what happened? What transpired that led to the fallout there?
Sure. So what led to the fallout there is, at that particular point in time, I was engaged to a young lady who I still adore to this day, right?
Mm-hmm.
In my own personal philosophy, I don't believe every single person is 100% straight. I don't believe
Mm-hmm.
everybody is 100% gay. I happen to
Hold
be
on.
one of those people
Pause
that's
now. Pause, brother.
I hope nobody listening just like coughed or something. Like, what?
Pause now. As we say on the short this podcast, pause. Now I don't know now, because I ain't never had no desire for no
No,
man.
no, 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 no. I'm saying not everybody. I'm not saying that there
Oh,
aren't people that aren't 100%. I'm just
okay,
saying
I
not
got you.
everybody.
I
You
got you.
understand what I'm
I got
saying?
you. Yep,
And
I got
from
you.
my
Yep.
lived experience, I
Hmm.
am not necessarily 100% gay. You might catch me on the right day with Christina. You don't know who I'm coming to the party with, right?
Yeah, and that's
So
facts. That's facts. I know that firsthand. Go ahead.
So it's like, you don't know if he being Christina, you just gotta send the invite and just say +1. He coming with somebody.
Okay.
And I wouldn't even necessarily describe that as bisexuality. I would just say I'm just me, right? But nonetheless,
Hmm.
at that
Hmm.
point in time, I was engaged to a young lady. Things did not necessarily work out, and I felt compelled to be very honest with my pastor, who was Alan at that particular point in time,
Hmm.
about what it was, because I felt it was dishonest to come before the people of God, as we say in the Black church,
Hmm.
and pray. And, when they call me, I'm there, I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to do, but I'm not able to show up as my full person, right?
Hmm.
And so I said, fine, it is what it is. The word says, them that worship God shall worship him in spirit and in truth. I had the spirit part down.
I got you. So your sexuality, was that ever a struggle for you before you became licensed? Was that ever a struggle for you growing up?
It was a struggle for me growing up, to be honest, because I was like, oh my gosh, am I abnormal? Because
Mm.
I didn't have someone around me to say, hey, I've walked the walk that you are walking. You
Hmm.
are going to be okay. Here is what you need, to do. Here are all the black men that have walked this path that you are walking. There's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with you. You're strong. I didn't have those type of role models, or those people to speak those kinds of words of life into me. Um,
Mm.
but what happened is I had the conversation with Alan, and the next Sunday I showed up in church. The pews were whispering, and
Oh no.
everybody was coming up to me saying, "Are you okay?" And every single person that came up to me and said, asked me if I were okay, they
Mhm.
told me that Alan's wife, whose name is Deborah, had told them that I was gay. And it was every
Mm.
word that I had said to Alan in his office. As that was happening, Alan told me that I had cognitive issues, that I had mental illness because of my sexuality, and that I needed to go to counseling. He sent me to the white people down at First Baptist.
Wait.
I might tell you a
So
joke. I'm not going to tell you a lie.
so he said you had cognitive issues, and instead of counseling you in house, he sent you down to First Baptist.
He sent me down to First Baptist. He set me down so I was no longer able to be of assistance to people because the
Mhm.
sexuality part, just mitigated everything else. I couldn't work audio video ministry. My keys were taken from me. It was
Your
a whole
keys were
nine.
taken from you.
Yes, like because I had keys to the church, the whole 9 yards. Like, I was doing a lot of stuff in the church. I was stripped of all of those things because of my sexuality, right?
Because of
So
something that you told him in confidence
that
that
I
then became gossip in the church.
Yes, because
Wow.
he shared it with his wife, right?
Mhm.
So I went down First Baptist, spoke to the good white people because that's the white people church.
Right.
Beautiful campus, by the way,
Oh,
but
absolutely. I
but
just passed it the other day.
but
On the way to go get me some fish.
right from Washington Shores Fish
Yeah,
Market,
that's right.
the best one in Orlando. Okay,
That's right.
get you a whiting dinner.
I got flounder this time.
Okay, I love their whiting dinner.
Yeah.
We are really from the same city. Anyway,
Yes.
so I went down there and the man said, "Well, why are you here?" And I said, "Well, my pastor sent me because he said, that I have mental health issues because of my sexuality." So he started asking me questions. He's like, "There's something wrong with you. I'll sign this and send you back to your pastor."
Oh wow.
And so,
So your pastor wasn't there during any of this. He just sent you, and what's remarkable to me is that you obeyed. You went.
listen, I was young. Now, would 40-year-old Antoine do that? No, sir.
Right. But it's even but I think it's even bigger though, Antoine, that here you are, your early 20s, and you're
Hmm.
following and obeying that because a lot of young men and women in their early 20s, they would have just said the hell with everything, to be honest with you. But you followed and you obeyed after being, I mean, betrayed in a sense because you became gossip of the church. So I'm sorry, keep going.
No, I mean, I did, right, and I think it had to do with the fact that I wanted to belong. I wanted to be in
Mm,
community. These were my people. You
mhm,
know, my that was my crew. JB, Thomas, Darius, Melvin, EJ. Those were my guys right there, and all of us were church dudes. You know what I
mhm,
mean? So
mhm,
I was like, I gotta do this if I want to be back in community with these people. I literally don't have a choice.
mhm.
So, now there can be something for that being said for parents not intervening and not
Mhm,
saying, "Hey, you're not going to walk on my child like that," which
mhm,
did not happen. So that tells you a lot about what was happening, with my mom at the time, who was going through her own thing. But thankfully, there
mhm,
were people in the church who were my aunts and my uncles who stood up for me, and I'll
mhm,
never forget. Aunt Sharon, her name is Sharon Spencer. She
mhm,
came up to me. She is like one of the most powerful singers that I've ever experienced in my life.
mhm,
She was the choir director, the whole nine. She came up to me and she said, "Baby, leave and do not ever turn around."
mm.
And I said,
Wow.
Okay, got it. I can do that. So during that time, I went from working at Publix, which you know, to working
Yeah.
at for the Orlando Regional Chamber of Commerce. During that same time in which this was going on, now we're talking about '08, I was laid off from the Orlando Regional Chamber of Commerce because of the economy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
life was looking real crazy. But thankfully, I had a part-time job at Forever 21 at Millennium Mall.
Okay.
I
So let me ask you this before you
uh-huh.
continue on with that. When your aunt told you leave and don't look back, had you since you when you came back from First Baptist, had you
Mhm.
had a conversation with your pastor at the time?
I just told him, hey, they said there's something wrong with me. And
And
he
what was
still,
his response?
to be honest with you, I can't remember, so I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I will tell you this
Mhm.
much. I remained seated. I never regained the position that I
Mhm.
had in the church. It never returned, right?
Mhm.
Because that's just who he is or who he was. I don't know. I haven't talked to him since then. I don't care to talk to him. Not that I wish anything bad on him. Peace and
Right.
blessings.
Mhm.
But it's just not for me.
Well, let me ask you
um,
this. Let me ask you
sure.
this. And this may come across as me trying to be funny.
No,
And
go
I'm not trying to be funny,
ahead.
but we know how we are in the black church, right?
Yes,
Do you think he would have been okay if you were just the choir director?
absolutely.
Okay.
And not only just acquired everything, I think he would have been okay if I would have kept it to myself.
Okay. But
If
once his wife got a hold of it, you think
it
that's
it
when it changed?
I think two things took place. Once I was honest and disclosed who I was, that
Mhm.
was trigger number one.
Okay.
Trigger number two was once his wife got a hold of it and it took off, there was no coming back. The bull was out of the gate, so to speak. There was
Okay.
absolutely no coming back.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so, here I am laid off from work, doing whatever. And I was praying hard. And,
Mhm.
keeping in mind, I had not graduated Valencia.
Mm.
Okay. So there
Okay.
is no direction. And with all of this chaos going on, I prayed and I prayed hard because God was the only person I had. And he was
Mhm.
using people in my life that I trust at that point in time. Auntie Sharon, was one of them and still remains one of them, um,
Mhm.
to speak to me. And, my last day at my desk at Orlando Regional Chamber of Commerce, I have a mentor named Crystal Gross. Crystal was saving grace. Crystal said, "What is your plan?" And the way she asked me, it was as if God was talking to me.
Mm.
And immediately out of my mouth came, "I'm moving to Atlanta and I'm going to school."
Wow.
Now, that had never been uttered before,
Had
but
you been up to Atlanta? Did you have family up there? I mean, had
I
there been an
went to
experience?
Atlanta one time for a pride, but I
Mhm.
knew I had to leave Orlando because
Wow.
I had been dogged. There was no way I was going to be able to resurface. And the money that I was making at the Orlando Regional Chambers, let me tell you, I was balling out of control. I had an Eddie Bauer expedition.
Woo.
Okay. I had me a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment over by the airport.
Wow.
It, I knew that I was not going to be able to make that much money again without
Mhm.
a degree.
Mhm.
And so I
Mhm.
packed all my stuff on top of that expedition, hit
Mhm.
it to Atlanta, lived in
Wow.
Atlanta for a year before starting Morehouse. I want to be very clear and very transparent. Went through 2 evictions in
Mm.
Atlanta, had
Mhm.
3 repossessions in Atlanta. I used to
Wow.
walk 3 miles from my apartment to the bus stop to get to Morehouse. Like
Wow.
by the time I got to the bus stop, I was so drenched that I would change in in the bathroom at the public transportation place that had poop smeared all over it, and
Mhm.
I would put on my clothes, go to Morehouse. From Morehouse, I had got me a little job at Bank of America in Kennesaw. Would finish, for those of y'all familiar with Atlanta, I would finish up at Morehouse, change out of my clothes, get on the train, get on the Metro, then get on Cobb County transportation to go all the way up to Kennesaw to work for Bank of America, to come back. I would land at my house at 2:00 in the morning to wake up and do it all over again the next day.
My God. So when you when you got to Atlanta, it took you a year. Did you have a plan in mind of what you wanted to do at that point? Like as far as your major or anything, or were you still swimming in the ocean, so to speak, as far as that is
At that
concerned?
point in time, because numbers came natural to me, I was like, I want to do accounting. I'm going to do accounting, and we're going to be done. Because I started working. I want to be very clear about this, right? Because I don't want people to think I'm bougie or something. I started working at public supermarkets, cleaning the bathroom. Okay, and then worked my way up to back office cashier. And that's how I got exposed to numbers, and then I worked for banks, etc. Right, but nonetheless, got to Morehouse, and I was like, accounting is going to be my major. Black woman named Dr. Keandra Johnson, I'll never forget her. She walked up to me in the middle of accounting class, and I was acing it. You couldn't tell me anything because I already worked in the field, I already knew what I was doing.
Right.
She came up to me with a piece of paper, and she said, I am removing you from my class today.
Whoa.
And she said, and this is the difference with going to an HBCU. You understand what I'm saying? Where people know your name, where people get to know your spirit.
Right.
And she told me, I am dropping you from my class. I have made an appointment for you with international relations. I have made an appointment for you with sociology, African American studies, and history. And she's like, you do not come alive in this class. She's like, you know what you're doing, but this is not you.
Wow.
You are to go to these appointments and you are to report back. But she said, oh yeah, I dropped you from the class and here's the proof. When I was just like, oh my goodness, you serious? So she had removed me from the course, in fact. And my first stop was African American Studies with Dr. Marcellus Barksdale. I didn't go to the other appointments because I knew I was where I was supposed to be.
Wow.
That's how I became an African American Studies major, which led me to where I am now at UCLA.
Wow. So let me ask you this, Antwann. When you were done at Morehouse, did you stay a number of years there in Atlanta? Did you have a desire to teach at Morehouse, or you knew that God was leading you somewhere else?
I did not have a desire to teach at Morehouse at that particular point in time because I had only had my BA, right? So there was, nothing. You can't teach at a collegiate level with a BA. You need at least a master's. Right. But during my process at Morehouse, I had mentored Dr. Frederick Knight. And Dr. Knight graduated from the UCs. And I believe he graduated more specifically from University of California, Riverside. And he put a summer research thing in front of me. And he said, you are going to do this. This was 2012. And I was like, oh, Lord, this is all the way out of California. I ain't been to California since my senior year in high school. And that was just the march and the band and come on back. Right? When we came out here for Disney. You trying to send me out there for 3-4 months. And so I came out here during that 2012 to do summer research, get to know people, etc. It was a bomb time. It was other kids. It was kids from FAMU, Tuskegee, Lane, Delaware, like Delaware State. It was all the HBCUs were represented. FAMU. It was amazing. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like, it's a pilot program. It was called UC HBCU. Right. And so when I graduated, I had put in all of my applications because my mentors were very, very serious. You are going to grad school. Frederick Knight, Marcellus Barksdale, Samuel Livingston, Ilya Davis, all of these. Like, if you are familiar with Morehouse, you know these people. They were like, you are going to grad school. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I was just like, oh, okay. Because, again, I had graduated, but there was no direction. When my applications went in, a sister named Dr. Myung Moore from UCLA called me. And she said, what do I have to do to get you to say yes today and say no and get you to cancel all your applications to all of the schools? I had to play it. I was in the pool for Harvard, Yale, who else? I think I might have applied to Brown as well. I definitely applied to Northwestern. And she said, what do I have to do to get you to turn down those applications today? Because that's part of the agreement that if you go for grad school, you got to say no to the other schools. You can't attend multiple schools at one time.
Okay.
And I said, well, sister, if you want me to go, money talks. You understand what I'm saying?
Right, right.
Money talk. So brother had
That's
no
right.
struggle through Morehouse. I had to start Morehouse taking one class, and then had to
Wow.
work my way up to 4 classes. Morehouse is expensive, but she said, I'll call you right back. I kid you not. She called me back in 10 minutes, and it was a full package. I said, "Where the dotted line at?
Wow.
Where's the
Now,
dotted line?"
now rewinding a little bit, and it's something we didn't capture the first time that we
Mm-hmm.
were talking. You were what in high school? You were what they say in the college level. You were like the drum major of the band, weren't you?
I was the first black male drum major at Colonial in the 2000s. Ain't that something? Katisha
So,
Booker was the first black female.
so why didn't you pursue that past high school?
To be honest with you, because I did not have direction.
Okay.
And and it's most people know me, as you're hinting toward, um in high school, I loved band. Oh, I was the
Right.
band dude.
Absolutely.
I
My
was
mama remembered you from so yes, when she would come in the stands and watch us play football, she remembered you. You hear me?
I was the band dude.
Mhm,
I was that guy. We did drum corps. We didn't necessarily do, the FAMU style, which is what I really wanted to do.
mhm.
But nonetheless, like, I was like the band dude. But it just didn't pan out. It wasn't in the cards.
Mm,
And
okay.
Valencia did not necessarily have a band. Now,
Right, right.
had I went to University of Florida right away, or had I went to Morehouse right away, more than likely I would have ended up in that band.
Mhm.
And perhaps, there would have been another major, but as the Lord would have it, at least according to my faith,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, right.
and that's not to come against anybody else's faith. It's just, my
Yeah.
my my faith tradition,
Right, right, right,
um,
right, right.
that my steps just happened to be ordered differently, and I ended up
Absolutely.
right where I was supposed to
Mm.
be.
Amen. So rewinding to with the Morehouse still, when you got up there,
Sure.
we know that there was a struggle. How did you feel being in Atlanta? Uh, as they like to say from time to time, well, I'll say it in my own words.
Hmm.
It's pretty much the black gay Disney world.
Yeah, the
In
Black Gay Mecca.
yes. So how did you were you initially accepted, and how were you feeling? Were you still uh kind of beaten down from the betrayal, so to speak, of your former pastor when you got to Atlanta, and so you were still maybe a little closed up, or did you feel welcomed when you were in Atlanta? How long did it take for you to feel welcome because of your
Maybe
sexuality? you
maybe
know
a couple of months. Like, when I got there, first of all, I saw me, so I was like, "Oh yeah, we out here." Right? I was like, "Oh, this is wonderful. I have this model of what a black gay man could be. I can have this
Mhm,
model of what a black gay." Now my fellow black men will understand what I'm saying.
mhm,
There's a lot of messiness in our community/culture.
mhm.
And I knew I did not want to go that route. But when I went to Atlanta, I saw so many black gay male professionals that were doing it. I was like, "Holy crap, we
Mm,
can really, really do this." And I'm going to tell you, the brother, still to this day, I consider him my spiritual father,
mhm.
who really took his time and walked me through it and helped me heal. And I was in his church every Sunday. Bishop Oliver Clyde Allen. OC Allen is my dude. I don't care what anybody says about that man.
Mhm.
He is the pastor of Vision Church Atlanta. I believe he's bishop now, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, because I haven't lived in Atlanta for quite some years.
Right.
Um, but while I was at Morehouse, and when I transitioned to Atlanta, he was my pastor all of those years. And he has what they refer to as an all affirming church.
Okay.
So literally, when the word says "come as you are," he means
Mhm,
that. You come in there with some
mm,
toe up jeans, come on in
mhm,
there. And that was the
mhm,
first time I had seen it. I was like, "Oh snap, that you really mean come as you are."
mhm.
Right?
Right.
But I mean, we was in there doing what black people do in church. But I mean, this man was amazing. I was good friends with one of his adjutants, and they
Mhm,
took me out for my was that my 26th birthday? It was either my 26th or my 27th birthday. Um, and he just really like loved on me like the way a father would a son.
Mm-hmm.
And Atlanta, to me, when people ask me where I'm from, I always say Atlanta because Atlanta is where I grew up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Orlando is where I was born.
Right.
Atlanta is where I was raised.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I was in my 20s, whether fortunately or unfortunately, when I was raised. Because
Right.
O.C. Allen wasn't having no mess. O.C. Allen was like, you can be black and gay and all that good stuff, and you've been through the trauma. Okay, but what's next? He
Mm-hmm.
called me higher. And when it was time for me to come to California, I told him, well, Pastor, he said, go, because he's from California.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
so, he prayed for me. The last time I saw him in person was at Morehouse College. Morehouse was honoring him. He prayed for me, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been in California since 2014.
So, before we get to the journey of California, 'cause that's
Mm-hmm.
coming next, I want to go back. I keep saying I want to go back, but I want to ask you this. And again, this is nothing. We all, especially as black men, we have this special bond with our mothers, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
you better not talk about our mother, you better not do anything against our, our mothers are our world. Did you feel betrayed by your mom because you said at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and granted, she was going through her own thing as you stated, but
Mm-hmm.
what happened to you, you did not feel a sense of backing. It came from your Aunt Jackie and others. I think you said your
Mm-hmm.
Aunt Jackie.
Aunt Sharon. Mm-hmm.
Aunt Sharon, I'm sorry. Aunt Sharon. Did you feel betrayed at that moment by your mom that your mom didn't stand with your behind
Oh,
you?
absolutely. We're not gonna beat around the bush.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Listen, I don't hide no cards. The story is the story. And what happened? What
Hmm.
happened? As these things were going on, my mom, who was an elder in the church, was still showing up, sitting on the second pew, right, or on the second row, because there were individual rows of chairs, but sitting
Hmm.
on that second row as an elder in the church. And people were coming up to me saying, "You don't feel a way that your mama ain't checked that Negro?"
Whoa.
And, I would not, the only people I would respond to was people that I knew I could trust with that conversation.
Right, right, right.
Because other people, I was like, well, hey, you see it, it is what it is. I wouldn't give them that type of fodder. But people that I was close with, they knew the hurt that was experienced in that moment. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, she was going through her own things, whatever, and that's that
Mm-hmm.
that's on her. But did I
Mm-hmm.
did I feel abandoned? Did I feel betrayed? At 110%. We ain't hiding no things.
Yeah. Okay.
when you when
Okay.
you healed, you got to call it for what it is,
That's
right?
right. That's
And
right.
I think, as young black men, regardless of your sexuality, your class position, or whatever have you,
Mm-hmm.
what we gonna have to start being honest about these mother-son relationships, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And part of the first, one of the first things that things, now I could be speaking into the wind. I'm just speaking from my own experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
One
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
first lessons that like you have to teach your mother is, I am not your husband.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that,
Right.
like there's so
Right.
much that comes like with this space. But to answer your question directly, I did.
Especially if you're the only boy.
Correct, which is
Mm.
my case, right?
Right. Right.
Um, and then there was a whole lot of other things, granted, that came to the picture at that point in time. I met
Mm-hmm.
my father when I was 21.
Oh wow. So from 0 to 21, Antoine, you had never met your father.
The last time I saw my father was when I was a little boy. I lived at
Uh-huh.
2600 Lake Sunset Drive. I'll never forget it. He drove some white car. It was cool. That was the last time that I saw him in my life and I was a little boy, right? Very little boy. But that memory is imprinted in my mind. And once we moved to the east side of town, I never saw him
Where did he
again.
live?
I have no I the last house that I remember my dad living in when we lived on the west side of town or on the other side of tracks.
Uh-huh.
Excuse me, he lived in a home that was off of some railroad tracks. That's all I can remember. Like, he
But
would
he
be
was
able
in
to tell
this
you
he
the
was
name of
in
the
the
road.
Orlando area.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure.
Oh
Yes.
wow. Wow.
Yes. And
Wow.
so you have to keep in mind that, when he comes back in the picture, I'm asking him certain questions. And listen, you have to understand who William is, okay? Just following William on Facebook will tell you who William is. All right.
Yes. Yes.
I'm like, that's just what that is. William
Yes.
is every piece of a black straight man
Yes.
that is that has New York roots with no filter,
Yes.
that wears the see-through net shirt with his little nipples poking out that you think he is, okay? Still telling him to put that shirt up. So he still think he a player. But nonetheless, when I will never forget that, because that was my 21st birthday present to myself. And I remember being 20, standing in the line at Publix, because I worked at Publix at the point in time, but we had went up to Publix. I said, listen, I want to find who my dad is. And she said, oh, okay, well, he ain't, you know the conversation that happens. Well, he ain't,
Yes. Yeah.
And I said, all right, bet. So there was no help in finding my dad. I got on the internet, and initially who I thought was my dad was actually my big brother. Both of them had been locked up, right?
Okay.
So the initial picture that I found, I was like, oh my God, this is my dad. My dad looks hella young. And then, because my oldest brother is a junior, right? Then I found Will Sr. And I said, oh, that for sure is my dad. And I ended up doing like a whole lot of work. Found his number on some public. This was years ago. So, found his number on some public. He ended up calling the number his wife picked up. And you could hear the audible gasp in the phone. And she screamed to contact. She said, William. I will never forget it. And he sounded so concerned because of the way her voice sounded. And she told him, you will never believe who's on this phone. And he said, oh, what that happened now? And she said, Antwann, you ever heard a grown man cry?
Yeah.
I'm talking about a grown, hard man, okay?
Yeah. It's a sight to see.
It was,
and hear.
It was, yes, it was those things that, we had arranged to meet. I mean, we've been tight ever since. And I started asking him a series of questions. Those series of questions led to questions for my mother.
So
that created some very uncomfortable tension. So keep in mind, this is going on as the church thing is going on and as I'm being laid off. It was a tornado.
Well, Antwann, I want to talk to you and see, can we bring you back for part 2? Because I think that this deserves part 2. I want to dive into that. And then I want to dive into your journey out in UCLA in California, and also what's been going on now with you over there, as we know what's all going on now. Can we get you back for part 2?
Yes, I'm so sorry that the background went this long.
No, listen, this is what this is all about.
I hope this helps somebody out there.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll be back next week with you guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this, Antwann. We're going to come back next week with part 2. We're going to pick up from where we left off at, and we're going to dive into all the whirlwind that was going on before you hit Atlanta. And then we're going to skip over Atlanta, because we already talked about that, and get you right where you are now in California. Thank you guys for listening to Conversations with Ronnie Keith. We'll be back with you next Friday. Holla.